I'm here visiting my friend, Lady Cara Willoughby, and her spectacular house, Birdsall House, here in Yorkshire. I'm very interested to learn more about the history of the house, but I can also hear some work that's going on right there. So I'm sure Cara is going to fill me in on her latest project. Hi everybody, and welcome back to the drawing room here at Mapperton. Every single family living in a historic house really does aim to balance that modern family life with the responsibility, though, of preserving a historic building for the future. I recently visited my dear friend Cara Willoughby at her family home, Birdsall House in Yorkshire, where history is literally helping breathe new life into their house. Hello! Oh my goodness! It's so amazing to be here, and this weather.
No, it's always like this in Yorkshire.
Somehow. All right, I do believe you. Oh, okay. Can I just say, Cara, first and foremost, walking down the drive to here, this house is spectacular. Then the windows are just huge. The windows are just vast.
We're so lucky we've got so much light coming into this house.
Yeah.
So this is the main start of the house. It was built in 1540s and it was smaller and darker.
Okay.
And then 200 years later, they made it look Georgian. So it's the look that it's got now with the big windows.
I see. So this is what I love about these historic houses, because you think, oh, it's a Georgian house, and then you find out it's actually Tudor.
So it was started after the dissolution of the monasteries with Henry VIII. And then the Sotheby family from the auction house, they bought the land, and they built a house in the 1540s, which was much smaller. And then in 1720s, the Willoughbys bought in and married the daughter.
Ah,
and
good marriage.
Good marriage. They had the money. She had the house, and they brought a lot of money in, and that's when they made it look much more Georgian in appearance. And they added wings. And
right. So what do you call this room?
This is the long hall.
This is the long hall. Yeah. Brilliant.
Two big fireplaces, and therefore probably was 3 rooms once upon a time.
When I was walking in, obviously it is vast. You've just said that this is sort of the original part, and then it was added on, because there's almost like 2 different wings on either side.
Yeah, so one wing was 1775, 1800, and that has the oval room and the ballroom in it. And then we've got the dining room was added in 1873.
Right.
That side.
Okay.
So luckily they built it all looking the same, with the same look. Rather than making it very Georgian and then very Victorian. So it ends up looking very symmetrical now.
Yes, it does. I mean, it's beautiful. So you have a ballroom.
We do. Should we go and find it?
I want to see your ballroom.
So we have an unbroken line of portraits from 1570s. So we can tell everyone who they are and who they're all painted by. All the way down. Unbroken.
What? Unbroken?
Yeah.
You're kidding me. Okay, so who do you want to start with first? I don't even know where to begin. Where do you begin when you have this many ancestors hanging on the wall?
The ones that, the oldest ones are through there.
Incredible.
The whole lot.
All Willoughbys.
All Willoughbys. But I love the fact that this is just a younger son. They couldn't be bothered to work out who it was.
That's brilliant. A younger son. Oh, those poor younger sons. They were never really given much thought, were they? So this is spectacular.
So this is the oval room, and these are the oldest portraits. So this is Elizabeth Willoughby.
Right.
And her husband, Francis Willoughby. So Francis Willoughby.
Okay.
And they built a huge family home called Wollerton Hall in Nottingham. That's where the main family home was.
Okay, so the Willoughbys technically come from
Nottinghamshire.
From Nottinghamshire.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's a younger son that married the daughter, the Sotheby daughter.
Right, I see.
So
and then you ended up here.
So the main house was sold in 1923 due to double death duties. So we don't have that anymore. But then that was, and many other estates were sold, and then we've ended up here.
Right. Yeah. The double death duties.
Yeah, 80%.
80%.
So
Unbelievable.
It's big, especially when you just lost the people whose death caused the death duties, you just lost them in the war. So they gave their lives, and yet you were still taxed on it. So it's a bit of a double blow. But that's what happens. So
that's what, in order to help pay for the wars.
Yeah. Exactly.
Unbelievable. So what was that house called? The original
Hall.
They built that. These
guys built it. They made their money on coal. Started off about 1200s. Made their money on coal, and that's how they built Wollerton. Interestingly, he was brought up by his maternal uncle, who was the father of Lady Jane Grey, the 9-day queen. So they were brought up together as brother and sister, although they were first cousins. And then, obviously, when Lady Jane Grey was put on the throne, the Willoughbys went slightly out of favour once she lost her head.
Right.
So that didn't work so well for them.
I think
so then
quite
he
handsome.
I think he looks really mean.
No, I don't know. There's something, I don't know.
No, I don't think he was a very nice man.
Oh, okay.
I think he was a bit of a meanie.
Oh dear. Okay, whoops.
But they had 8 daughters. So suddenly it was like, oh no, what do we do? So their eldest daughter was called Bridget, who's over there, and she took on the house, and she married her second cousin, who was the legitimate heir, because girls couldn't,
of course,
inherit. So the couple opposite are the two who took over the house. So then it goes down and down.
And then it goes down and down. Oh my goodness. They're lovely portraits, though. They are in brilliant condition, I have to say. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of like him.
I like her. I think she looks more fun. Well, she's got good clothes.
She does this, yeah. And she has brilliant clothes. I mean, look at that. It's completely embellished. I
think her daughters fought over her clothing when she died because it was so covered in jewels.
Well, I would too.
Yeah.
So oval room.
Oval room.
Yep.
And then ballroom.
And oh my goodness. This is like a proper ballroom. Okay, do you use this room?
We do, not for balls.
Yeah.
But we do. Yeah. Nowadays we use it for
what?
weddings.
What do you mean you're not having ballroom dances in here?
So these are gasoliers. So Birdsall made its own gas from coal pits, because that's how the family made their money.
Right.
And then the gas was pumped up to the house, which you can see the vents in the ceiling.
Yes.
And then these are all gasoliers, which is why their height is such. So it's one of the first private houses to have gas-lit rooms. Which makes it must have been amazing after candlelight.
Exactly. Yeah. And they all working.
No, they're electric now.
Oh, right. I was really going to be impressed.
Definitely
Cara.
electric.
I was like, that's super impressive that you're still able to do this. It's like, wow.
So we now do events here, and part of those events we do weddings here. So we'll do about 15 weddings a year, and these rooms are used for wedding breakfasts, or they're used for concerts. We have classical concerts in here throughout the year. We've got a play going on around the gardens at the moment, so they'll be using it. So it's used for all sorts of different things.
Oh my goodness, wasn't that ballroom absolutely spectacular? I mean, the atmosphere and those wonderful, wonderful windows flooding the room with light, it was amazing. And I felt as if I was stepping into a historical novel, which frankly isn't too far from the truth. This wonderful, look at these portraits, are stunning.
This lady is interesting, because she is the great aunt of Jane Austen. And Jane Austen's mother was called Cassandra after her. Jane Austen's sister's called Cassandra after her. She was Cassandra Willoughby. And the names of Willoughby and Middleton, in their Sense and Sensibility, are from this family.
Are from this family? Oh my goodness. So that's Jane Austen's great aunt. And do we know if they were close? Did they have a relationship?
So she married the Duke of Chandos, and I think it was always seen to be, wanted to, in those days, sort of go up. So they were named after her because she was the Duchess of Chandos, and therefore seen. And she was quite a society figure. She was also incredible at keeping documents and writings on how life worked at that time.
She's incredibly glamorous, though, too. I mean, I think she's strikingly beautiful. Very. Have you had any Jane Austen films here? Because when I was walking down, I actually felt like I was stepping into a period drama.
That'd be great though, wouldn't it?
Well, yes.
Quick sense of sensibility in the home of Mr. Willoughby.
We really need to get a Jane Austen Hollywood film here, that's for sure. I mean, wonderful, absolutely stunning. But I've only walked through really 3 rooms, but the upkeep though, I mean, this is a vast house. I know it's been built on, as you explained, but the upkeep is...
It is.
And it's your private home. And I know you've children, you know, and this is a lot.
But it's a private home, but it's an office. I mean, it's a business. We've all got to, you know what it's like. I mean, you live and work above the shop, in the shop, round the shop. It works around you, and you sacrifice quite a lot of your life for it. But you've got to keep it going. Yeah. Keep the show on the road.
You got to keep the show on the road, and you have so far. I mean, it's really spectacular. So here at Mapperton, much of the contents and the furniture actually comes from the original family ancestral seat, Hinchingbrook House, which had been in the family for over 350 years. It was the home of the Earls of Sandwich, but unfortunately, it was sold in the 1950s. And the same thing happened to the Willoughby family. After the First World War, Birdsall House became the main Willoughby family residence when Middleton Hall and Woollerton Hall were both sold. However, many of the pieces at Birdsall were brought from both of those family houses, and one of those treasures is absolutely stunning. Cara, this 4-poster bed is magnificent.
Yeah, it's good.
Do people sleep in this bed?
Yeah, definitely. No, this is from Woollerton, the house that the family used to own, the main big house in Nottingham, and so that's why it's so big. But it's by Chippendale. Oh. So it's a very big bed with all the original pelmets on it.
Oh my goodness.
Beautiful.
It is
exquisite.
Work, isn't it? So this dates back to...
late 1700s?
Yep.
Yeah.
And the fabric is wonderful as well.
Yeah, that's all original, which is, aren't we lucky?
Lucky. So again, so when Woollerton was sold, you were able to gather a lot of the contents.
Well, I think if the family didn't keep it, it was sold. Full stop. So that included the pelmets. We've got the pelmets in this room. Yeah. Everything, absolutely everything. It was stripped out and sold because they had to raise money for 80% of their estates.
Of the estate, because they were double death duty taxed, all that.
So that's why we've got these enormous cupboards, which almost look out of proportion in comparison to the house, but that's because Woollerton was a much, much bigger house.
Amazing. So you have Americans who come and stay here?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they just love it, I bet.
Yeah.
I mean, look at me, I'm smiling from ear to ear. I'm an American, and I love
that.
But
it's this is old England, isn't it? Suddenly.
It is. This is like when I walked into this room, you know, obviously my eye was drawn to the 4-poster bed, but this is England right here. This is history.
But it hasn't changed. Also, it really has not changed for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Can you come?
I feel like I'm coming into, obviously, the private part of the house, if you like, but incredible kitchen. I do remember something. So obviously, because we're both part of historic houses, and there's all these awards that happen, and I remember, I'm sure you won the kitchen award.
Yeah, in 2019 we won the kitchen award. Yeah.
Right, I remember.
So they started it all up because the first thing that many generations do now, many family members do when they take over the house, is put in a new kitchen because they're so family based. They want, you know, space for the whole family to be in one room. They don't have the staff they used to, so now they wanted to have a prize for innovative putting kitchens into these big old houses.
This is incredible though, because I walked from that, you know, historic looking part of the house into, again, this is still the historic part of the house, but you've modernized it and made it much more, you know, family center, heartbeat.
Yeah, but this is where we live. I mean, we live in a massive house, but we actually all live in one room. ironically. Yeah. So I've got 3 children, 3 dogs. You know, we all live here. This is home. This is the beating heart.
Yeah, and it's wonderful just to see the difference and really how these houses have evolved.
Yeah.
And we're much more relaxed now.
Yeah. When this house was running at its best in about sort of 1870s, they had 17 house staff, 20 gardeners, grooms, goodness knows what else, 2 walled gardens, 5 acres of glass houses. You know, it's incredible. Now, none of that.
No, right, that's exactly right. None of that. And I actually prefer it. Yes, please. Thank you. I actually just prefer it like that because it keeps me busy.
Yeah, totally. I can just sat for hours doing needlepoint.
Yeah.
Can you bored?
So you did this project. Obviously, this will be. I always think of it as like a legacy. You know, as you are the.
What are we going to leave behind for our generation?
Exactly.
So we had the Victorian kitchens that were downstairs. Then after the Second World War, they stopped being used, and when there were many less staff, there became 1 cook and 1 housekeeper, and they used these kitchens from the 1950s. So this was 6 different rooms, which we've knocked right way through to make this kitchen. So it had to be somewhere that we, you know, lost a little bit of the old history, but in doing so, made a bit of the next history.
Well, that's perfectly put, and also. Look at this view here as well. I mean, this is just a wonderful, amazing, unspoilt view of your garden and just of the landscape.
We're really lucky it doesn't have anything that has been built in the last however many hundred years.
Yeah.
So there's nothing's changed. And you can imagine this, when Capability Brown designed it, you can imagine that it looked almost similar to what it does.
Right, and that's what's incredible at Capability Brown. I mean, that you are looking out to Capability Brown design right here. Yeah. I mean, wonderful.
I do wake up every morning and appreciate my view. It's not something that gets lost on me.
It's incredible. Every day, as historic homeowners, we do respect the past life of these wonderful, wonderful buildings, but also recognize a need to adapt them for modern life. And at Birdsall, Cara and her husband James have taken care to both preserve and modernize.
We only have about 15 weddings, I said, but they need somewhere to dance in the evenings. At the moment, they're dancing in a marquee because if they dance in the house, there'll be damage, and we don't want that to happen. So what we're doing is we're turning the Victorian kitchens into a evening event space. So it creates a whole nother entity for us.
That is fantastic, because before you said they had their wedding breakfast in the oval room and the ballroom, but then they would dance in a marquee. Is that right?
Exactly.
Now you're bringing everything in-house.
And I think when people want to look at a wedding in a house like this, and they want the historic surroundings, they could have a marquee anywhere in a field, wherever they wanted. They want something that's all unique and on site.
I do visit a lot of historic houses just so I can sort of meet the owners, and also get some ideas and of course look at the history, but I think more importantly, we are living in houses that have become our business. We're living above the shop. Yep. So I always remind people when they say, oh, your house is amazing, Mapperton, it's beautiful. I'm like, well, it is, but it's also a business. In order to restore the tapestries or repair for the roof and to make sure that the stonework is done correctly in the windows, usually for most of us, it's about opening up the house in some sort of way.
So downstairs is totally, you'll see it is, there's nothing in there, it's just the shell. But it was damp and it was in need of a lot of restoration. So if we can then develop it, use it, pay off what we've borrowed to make it work, and then after that we've got an area of the house that wasn't used and is now being used.
Yes.
If our son wants to change that in future years, then that's fine. But we've done what we need to do this generation to ensure that another bit of the house stays viable.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And this is, this is a vast house. And as you said, those 2 wings were added on. There's a lot of work that goes into this.
Yeah, but I think the family, when they were in sort of 1870s, when they were running at their best, they had parents, 13 children, 17 house staff, so you're constantly got, in your 30s of number of people in here without any guests. So it was running as a big ship.
Right, it was running. You're just running it as a slightly bigger ship, really, with weddings.
With less staff.
That's right. And that's why these houses...
We've got to adapt to this world and adapt to how we can run them, because we can't run them in the way that they were built.
No.
So we have to run them in the way that we can manage in today's age.
It's perfectly put. Perfectly put. Well, cheers to that. To my lovely Birdsall mug. Can I buy one of these?
You can have one of them.
Okay, thank you. It'll be my souvenir. Well, I could not wait to explore downstairs, where the Victorian kitchens once were, and where Birdsall next chapter is literally coming to life. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm obsessed with these, the bells. This is one of the best ones I've ever seen.
So we've got 3 sets of bells, and each bell has a different tone, so that if the guests were in the evening drawing room, or the morning drawing room, or the library, or the billiard room, then the member of staff would know exactly which room they were in and which room was calling them from the tone of the bell.
This is like another world, another time that I love. I mean, listen, I'll be honest, me as the American, and I think many people though, visiting these historic houses, we love this upstairs, downstairs that used to exist. And we've obviously all evolved because there is no downstairs anymore.
No, well this was last used after the Second World War.
Okay, so give me a little bit of history. We're downstairs. This is
the old kitchen.
Right.
Those are 2 different oven sets. There's a big range that's gone off to be restored. This is the old warming oven going through to the servants' hall. We've got a clock, Victorian clock up there, which is going to be restored. And all the hooks and everything are on here. And this is going to be our dance floor with a glitter ball.
Oh my gosh, I love your glitter ball.
That's great.
It's amazing.
Ball, isn't it?
This is amazing.
So now, okay, I see you've got the plans out. Has anybody done this before as far as converting? I mean, you've got a huge downstairs space. I mean, this is massive. This is what we all think about when you've got the upstairs, downstairs.
Yeah.
This is enormous.
Yeah, I think other people have done it. And certainly the Historic House have put us in touch with a couple that we've been to see.
Right,
they haven't been quite like this. As in the amount of space, but aim big or go home.
Aim big. Okay, so walk me through this. Oh my gosh, this is incredible.
So we've got a new entrance so that guests can leave the house completely or come in completely separately, and that comes into the old pantry and old sinks area, which we'll see in a minute. And we've then got a big dance floor.
We're in the dance floor area right now.
Yeah.
With the large glitter ball with a motor.
It's got to go round.
It's brilliant. Fantastic.
Then we've got the cook's room next door.
Okay.
Where the cook had her organisational room and her desk and things like that, the old original head cook. We've got staff cloakrooms, which used to be carpenters' offices. We've got the old servants' hall, which is a really big sitting out area for new guests.
Right.
And a new bar is going into a room adjacent to that. Then we've got an area for eating in the evening, so we can put out a buffet that people can
pizza, whatever with it. Yeah, late night snacks.
Exactly
yes.
And a cocktail bar, so they can go and have cocktails there. Gosh. So it's going to be good.
Unbelievable.
It's a big project.
It's a big project. So what are you doing as far as aesthetically with the look of it?
Because we're trying to keep it very much like the old kitchens. We're trying to keep the atmosphere.
Right, and you said you're restoring
the old ovens.
Right.
They're all off. That's all the soot still from all
That's the soot.
Hundreds of years of
So
cooking.
This is not paint?
No, that's not paint, that is soot.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my, so what will you do with this then?
To be fair, probably take it off because it's going to get on people's clothes. And so it's not going to be very friendly for people. But we could paint it black, but actually underneath is really nice old stone. So I think we'll keep that. We'll just brush it back.
So this is the cook's room through here, is that right?
So this is where the head cook used to live. She probably had all her ingredients in here and things like that.
this entire sort of cabinet, chest of drawers, whatever you want to call it, dresser, this will stay.
This will stay, and actually these are the shelves from this side, but there was such loose plaster behind them that they were loose. So the plaster's come off, and then those are going back on the wall, just so that you can see there it's, you know, it's getting loose behind it, and we just need to make sure that it's all really solid. And then this one is actually lowering a bit and turning into seating for guests. So everything's going to be done up, not beautifully. The whole point is not properly shiny. It's in working order and solid and secure. So it's got all the old plates, all the old enamelware I've got will all go up on the shelves.
So head chef was in here. It's big space for a head chef. Do you think so?
I think she's got quite a small desk, and then she probably had, you know, lots of stuff in here.
So she's doing all of her recipes here.
Yep. Exactly.
All the recipes here.
Exactly.
And what do you think she would have kept in these drawers? Just curious.
I don't know, but I mean, butler's instruments and, you know, all those sort of things. I mean, sure, it's probably full of candlesticks and probably not silver because they were kept in the silver room, but all the stuff you need to run a kitchen.
To run a kitchen, incredible. This is unbelievable. All right, where to next?
Let's go down to the old servants' hall.
Okay, fantastic. This is, I mean, I'm trying to feel the energy of what it would have been like.
Shops down there, and then in here we've got the servants' hall, which is the food would come in from the corner, straight from the ovens. This is the original table that they all sat at. And they all had their meals and chatted away in here.
When you were, did you have to clear out quite a bit of bits?
Yes, it's been used as storage for ages.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I did look at the plans, but remind me, I'm here at a wedding, and now where am I?
This is going to be the seating area. So you're going to have sofas.
Hang out.
Sofas, banquette seating, low lighting, quite gentleman's club.
Right, yes.
And then this is going to be the bar.
And this is going to be the
bar.
bar.
We've got a semicircular bar, and it's all going to be...
Right. And I have just spotted, because my beady little eye has spotted more bells.
More bells. So these are coming out, these white things are coming out.
Right.
But then you've got number 17A, housekeeper's room, dining room. These are slightly more back of house actually than...
Yes, that's what I saw.
Than that set.
You've got sitting room, bathroom, and dressing room.
But interestingly, they all make different noises. So always use a candle snuffer. We've got a small dining room, but then, for instance, what's that one? The sitting room. Yeah, makes a different tone to the dining room.
Oh yeah.
So
then they would get used to the sound. They would know that sound,
that tone was theirs, and they were due upstairs.
And they were due upstairs.
Probably in the middle of their meal.
Yeah. You're probably right. The bells are obviously staying.
Obviously, yeah. Everything that was part of the 1870s kitchen is staying.
So I wonder,
it's a big project, but
I'm
it's
just trying to think if I have like a big birthday coming up, or if I can.
You'll have to come back when it's finished.
I just need to think of what kind of party I want to have here.
Definitely.
All these ideas. I love it. I'm inviting myself to have have my own party here. It's amazing.
Let's go through to the pantry.
Okay. It's like a maze down here.
So these are old sinks along here. They're all bowed, so the water keeps going down. And then that's an old pantry.
What's
I think it's a cold store because it has a huge, great sort of stone.
And I can see the hooks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pestle and mortar.
Oh my goodness! It's enormous. This is wow.
That's some of the old storerooms where the vegetables used to come in and out every day from the wall gardens, and then come in through to the kitchens.
Wow. So, remind me where I am again now. This is a pantry. No.
Well, this is more of the sort of sinks area, isn't it? And then that's an old steam oven. Oh. So it's a very early steam oven. So we're going to do that up, and then this will be the entrance hall for the event space. These windows are going to become doors. And then everyone will come in through here, and with all the old plate racks and the old sinks and the old ovens, and then that'll give us, I've got some enamel signs, and it'll give us the feeling that we're actually in the old kitchens. Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
It's incredible just to think that, 100 years ago, this was obviously in full use as a working kitchen, but you're able to then take this space, keep all of these important features, call it the old kitchens, and then it's evolved to where we are.
The next generation. But what we're lucky is that no one changed it in the middle, so that we have got the stuff from 150 years ago. Otherwise, it would be the old kitchens via the 70s, which would be a bit of a problem.
Yes, that's a fair point. That is a fair point. And then what about up here? I'm just looking at this.
Well, to be fair, the M&E guys, the mechanical and electrical guys, want that roof void to put all their stuff in. So I was going to make it into a vault, but I've been
you've
got it down on that.
Yeah.
I've kept some things compromised with builders.
It's a compromise.
But these are all staying.
These are all staying.
Yeah.
Look at these these are amazing.
But they must have been quite
sinks.
short because they're quite low.
Yeah,
You can
they
actually
are.
break your back
Yeah,
if you were trying to do that all the time.
You're right.
But,
So, okay, entrance hall. So this will be, in one sense, the brick comes out there to create the doors.
Yeah, the doors are literally going to be very wide doors, so they're going to be exactly
Wonderful.
what they are now.
And look at that lovely beam up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're keeping all the brick where it's brickwork, we're keeping it as brick.
Yeah.
Where it's painted, we'll keep it as paint. So it's going to look pretty rustic down here.
And I like that green color.
Yeah, that's the colour that's going all over.
That's, when you mentioned the green color back there, that's a really
going all
lovely
over.
green color. I mean, Cara, this is, and I know I keep saying it over and over again, but it's a tremendous
You have to come back.
project. I'm just trying to think, are you hiring? Because I really want to be a part of this job.
How good are your skills?
Excellent. I'm really, really good I'm a very good decorator.
Okay.
So I could do the green paint.
Yeah, you're on.
Oh my goodness, the transformation that is taking place downstairs at Birdsall is absolutely breathtaking. History is really being brought to life. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you've enjoyed this wonderful, wonderful visit to Birdsall House. Until next time, bye everybody. Alpin Manor is an idyllic manor house hidden in the most tranquil of valleys in the Cotswolds. Welcome to the drawing room here at Mapperton. Mapperton has been voted the nation's finest manor house, but every manor house I visit is stunning. I love the atmosphere and intimacy of these houses, but what historically makes a manor house a manor house? So to explore this and much more, I visited Alpin Manor, a treasure of the Cotswolds and the most beautiful home to Sir Nicholas and Lady Manda. Hello. How are you? So nice to see you. So nice to see you. Hello. How are you? Lovely to see you. Wow. Goodness me. I had to really pause as I was coming up, looking at just the lovely view that you have here.
So we have these steep hills. A lot of the Cotswolds are rather a plateau and featureless, but here it's very dramatic landscape.
Yes.
And this we call the Great Hall. Not all that great, but
Yeah,
it is the centre of the house. And what seems odd to some people is you come in at the lower end of the hall, off centre. In early houses, they have this thing called a screens passage, which is where that beam stops short, on the beams with this big bearing beam. So, and that seems to date back to almost like people living with their cattle in a house, you know,
Right.
a long house and the animals on one end, and then and then in the Middle Ages, maybe the lord of the manor was here with tenants and they slept on the floor.
Right.
And then gradually our modern ideas of houses develop where you have private parlours, apartments, drawing rooms with drawing rooms at the upper end of the hall. And the lower end of the hall was where all the kitchens, service rooms, buttery, pantry, funny
Right.
names like that, that end. And here this elegant door case was built in 1719, so hundreds of years later. You've got an idea, it says in the accounts, to 2 Italian pillars.
Oh my goodness.
So you get the Renaissance coming to the Cotswolds about 250 years after it had finished in Italy or something.
If we were to date the Great Hall here, what would we put this at?
Well, it's interesting that the walls are probably from what you can call the medieval house, and then the ceiling was put in exactly 1521, because you can date the beams by drilling into them, and then you take the profiles of the tree rings and match them up with others in the laboratory under a microscope. So it was probably built within a year or two of 1521, 1523, and that marries in with literally the marriages of the family. We knew that there was a marriage then, and they would come in perhaps a bit of a dowry from the wife.
Right, yes.
And then sort of let's upgrade the house a little bit. And it's been untouched since, really. It adapts very well to our living today. I was saying that we arrived here just with 1 child, 2 dogs, 2 goats, and a baby. But now we can't fit around the dining room table because we extend it when the whole family's
We'll have to
here.
have 2
We've got 28
like that.
people.
Right.
So we get another one in.
Including babies. We got
Right, fantastic. But of course, then, this is then still a very much used and loved room in the house.
Yeah.
And very adaptable.
Probably the most, apart from the kitchen, the most used room in the house.
Right.
When we're all together.
Fantastic.
And I was saying how they probably had the court leet of the manor here as well. They were official places, these manor houses, and the lord of the manor would have presided over a little court.
Right.
Trying all his
just
servants
right here. Incredible.
Just right here through the ages.
Alpin is the most astonishing survival of the medieval manor house. In the 1920s, it was sold for the first time in 800 years to visionary architect and follower of the arts and crafts movement, Norman Jewson.
And what was rather nice is our family were tied up with the arts and crafts movement rather, and built these big houses in the 19th century which expressed that aesthetic.
Yes.
And we got to know him in his old age. So when he died, age 92, he left various things that he wanted the house to have, like his settle that had belonged to Ernest Jimson, his master, and various sconces around the fireplace. And the plasterwork is very typical. Can you see
Yes,
the
of course,
reveals
yes.
of the windows?
Yes.
They did these little just sort of touch of its own time.
Each room at Alpin has its very own special atmosphere, which echoes the historic changes made by each generation.
The house is very well documented for a house of this scale, so we know exactly how much the hinges cost and nails. And
Fantastic.
And it cost £2.13 and sixpence to panel this room in 1719.
Well, yeah, but you think what that is today?
Yes,
It's a lot of money.
Yes, it is a lot of money back then, but it's beautifully panelled.
This is the original painting above in the little shell house. And when we came here, everything in the house was painted white, gloss white and lime wash.
Right.
And we gradually painted this, taking colours from scraping under the panelling, and you find little traces of the old paint, and this in the shell head. And so we did this in the mid-70s. We came here.
Right. How wonderful. It's beautiful. And I love it that you just have dotted all around lots of family pictures, because there are, how many are there of you now? You've mentioned you have, how many children?
5 children.
Right.
We are 28 altogether, so 16 grandchildren. I know. Well, you know, you with your 4 children might get that.
I know. That's right. I could, yeah.
Joy to come.
Exactly. Well, wonderful. This is absolutely stunning just to see just the difference between I can see a real difference and feel a real difference between, of course, the Great Hall and that period, that 200-year period. Yes, stepping into here, just one step in, and I'm in a different 200 years later. And just as is the case here at Mapperton, over time, the rooms take on new life. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So tell me, what do you use this room for now, and then what was it used before?
Well, I mean, family dances in here.
Roll back the carpet.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, literally.
28 of you.
Yes. New Year's Eve, everybody starts dancing.
Oh my.
Little ones too. You know,
Little ones, yes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes, all your grandchildren.
Yeah.
How wonderful. So this is your dance room, let's say, but what was this?
We call it the oak parlour,
Right.
for obvious reasons. This is oak. It's got the date stone outside, 1616, so we know it was remodelled, probably where the medieval early parlour, solar, as
Right.
they call it then, would have been. And it's got the bay window, and you can see all the mullions are at drunken angles.
Yes.
And we had a friend staying in the room above, is essentially the spare room, and he couldn't draw the curtains one evening, and when the handyman came up the following morning, we found that it's only being held into the rest of the house by cobwebs and friction and
Literally.
hope.
Literally.
And it's been marching away at the rate your fingernails grow from the rest of the house. And you can see, for instance, my great-aunt's bell pull thing. There are no servants to summon now. By the time, with a 5-foot drop, it's 3 inches away from the wall, just at the bottom there. So all walls in the house are at angles.
The Manda's joy in the house was so lovely to see. Alpin has such a wonderful and warm feeling. It is, of course, a home with family at the heart, and the Mandas were the first family since the 18th century to raise their children at Alpin. On a slightly overcast spring morning, but determined to embrace the British weather, we sat in the stunning garden where I met Hugo Manda, who is guiding the manor into the future. You've got this idyllic Cotswolds manor house, and you decided it's also a business, right? So you've come on board, Hugo, in one sense, and when did you decide to open it up to the public, or had it always been like that?
Well, our predecessors got grants to do roofs and things, and the condition, strings attached, were to open the house in a very modest way on Fridays in June and July. And they said, kind of, we'd like you to try carrying it on. And then we started having lots of children, and it became impossible, and we closed the house, really. And at that time, the microeconomy of the farm, the estate, was much more viable than today. Today, it's just a question of almost keeping it there.
Yes.
But it doesn't really contribute in any way. So we evolved towards it, I suppose. We started opening the house bit by bit, and since then, it's evolved more towards events, weddings. We have non-commercial things like concerts.
I think my father's being very modest. I mean, one of the important things is that my mother is an extremely good cook, and we had all this holiday accommodation, and you need more than just houses, and so they opened a restaurant in the barn, and my mother was the cook for 20 years there. And so we used to have the house open to the public, and we did cream teas and lunches, and then everyone from the holiday cottage would come and have dinner, and so it was busy all the time. And we all used to work in the tea room, serving teas and washing up and all the rest of it when we were children, and we were room guides in the house when we weren't doing that. So we all sort of, I mean, for example, on an Easter Sunday we would we would all go and do lunch and then do the house opening, and after that we do the Easter egg hunt when everyone had left.
Right.
And so it was very much a sort of family-run little business which was trying to find ways to survive,
yes,
while also not putting so much pressure on the house that the whole place fell down.
Right.
And that worked for a while, but then it came to a point where actually, I don't know how it is in Mapperton, but Elpen's almost too small for that sort of business to be viable. So we sort of pivoted into private events, many of which are weddings, because this place, as my father was saying, it lends itself to private parties, and the farm is basically unviable now, but it means that you've got this great sort of shelter belt. People can come here and be private and have a lovely weekend here, and have a great time in the barns and the gardens, and that works really well, and use all the accommodation. So it's about finding ways to allow us still to live here,
yes,
while not sort of losing the atmosphere and the heart of the place, you know,
yes,
and maintaining this sense of a lived-in house at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. We've had to really continue to evolve from the time that really the historic house had to, many of them had to open up their doors, especially after the Second World War. You know, that's when we started to see this trend of historic houses opening their doors to the public so that they could still live, but live in a different way, but also keeping the integrity of the house. And as you mentioned, it is, of course, finding that right balance of how many visitors do I want in my house because of the wear and tear. And that's what I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand, that having thousands of visitors in your house is wear and tear, and then that's another repair bill somewhere further down the line. And how are you going to pay for that repair bill? Well, you have to figure out and evolve and come up with different ideas. And as you've just, so beautifully put, it's sort of looking at what works, what has worked, what's not working, and shifting and evolving.
But the other thing is that the house is also the focus of a community, and has always been, and it provides jobs and a sort of dynamic to the whole, wider economy. And the cottages were partly a thing of maintaining these old buildings, which had no function. They were part of the feudal estate, and staff lived in them, or some were just derelict, some didn't really exist. And so we did up these historic buildings.
Nowhere else better describes how a manor house was at the center of a community in centuries gone by. And today, the historic elements of manor life at Alpen have provided all important business opportunities. In England, you have castles, you have stately homes, you have halls, you have courts, and then you have this manor house. And what exactly makes up a manor house, the elements around
Well, I
the
think
manor
it's a very
house?
ancient thing. With the Norman conquest, it was the Roman villa, and it was actually a unit of administration. This is what's called a gentry manor, which meant that the lord of the manor lived here. The feudal overlords were in the big castle nearby, Berkeley Castle, and they had their own court. There was a manorial court, and we have the court rolls telling of fines that they administered, and if somebody inherited a tenant farm, they had to pay what was called heriot to the lord of the manor, which was like the best cow or something like that. He'd say, sorry, I'll have that, and all that kind of thing. So it was a legal system as well as just a name. And I think in this part of Gloucestershire, the manor house is often called a court. And this, I don't know whether people really, the manor was the legal thing, really.
Right,
and then here we have the church, the barn, the mill, the open fields on the tops of the hills, and the cottages. All the elements of the manor are here, including the courthouse, which is a little building on the west side.
I think the thing that makes Alpen also interesting in that context is that if you stand on the lawn looking at the house, you can see the courthouse, the mill house, the farm. Everything that makes the manor is still here. The church, and also in business terms, the barn. And of course, barns. Whereas before they were just places where you would use it for threshing or storage. Now they're crucially important to these sorts of places because they are events venues.
Yes.
And you can repurpose them as something completely different. And now they're great for, if you think of the wassails people used to have in barns, now it's weddings and discos and conferences and all that sort of thing. So they serve a modern purpose. So the traditional medieval manor has sort of morphed into something completely different, but it still looks very similar to how it would have been 500 years ago, which is quite fun.
That is perfectly put.
And I think also it's expressed in the architecture. So this isn't, although it's described as a tiny manor house, a farmhouse wouldn't have been allowed to have, say, a bay window or an oriel window. That was definitely expression of status.
Yes.
And your coat of arms on the front of the house. You see, the farmers didn't have coats of arms. It was expressed itself as, it's not a huge house by country house standards, but it was definitely the house for miles around.
Yeah, and it has the markings on it to say, I am, a powerful house.
Relatively.
Exactly. Alpin Manor, just like Mapperton and most historic homes I visit across the UK, blends history and the ever-present need to be commercial. So Hugo showed me the redevelopment of the barn.
So this is the cider barn.
Oh my goodness.
Which is a sort of misnomer. I mean, but in medieval terms, this was essentially the warehouse of the estate.
Right.
So it was the threshing room. There would be an open wagon porch there. You'd have a through draft, and they'd bring all their produce in there, especially the wheat, and they would thresh it and produce their grain. So that was the first purpose of it. And we know from the dendrochronology dating that these cruck trusses were put up in 1446.
Oh my goodness! This family is very good at taking timber and dating it. Incredible.
Well, the great thing is that they had to have been building in green oak with these structures, so it must have been built in that year, or maybe 1447. So it's a pretty hard date in terms of the sort of how you would build a timber frame structure. They would have been, you can see here, these sort of cross braces going across, so people were much smaller then. It would all be quite squat.
Oh yes, I see, yes. And it's obviously survived.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what's incredible, that it has survived since 1440.
Well, I think one of the reasons it survived is because, yes, it was a threshing barn, but then it became something else. Right. So behind us over there, you've got the cider press, which was probably built in the sort of mid-18th century, 1730s kind of thing. And what you've got here is you've got two vertical oak structures.
Is this the original cider press?
This is the original cider press where they used to build, produce all the cider.
So this survived as well?
Yeah.
This is incredible.
The coolest thing about it for me is this wonderful upright here. It's almost like you can see they'd built the cider press and they were planing off the bark.
Yes.
And almost thought halfway they just stopped and thought, to hell with this, let's just go and make some cider, we're done, sort of thing. But I mean, for me as a child, this was our playroom on wet days.
Right.
So there used to be a trough in the middle where you'd pour all your apples in and create the pulp and then load it onto the press and press the apples and all that sort of thing. But we would ride our bikes in here and we'd have our slide in here and our climbing frame and we'd just mess about when we couldn't go into the fields and climb trees. Right. So we had no idea what this thing even was. It was just a sort of an annoying piece of wood in the corner that got in the way of our games. And then slowly you come to ask the question, what actually is that thing? What's it doing here? And it becomes, more interesting. Yes. So that's why we call the place the cider barn, because you've got this huge galumphing pre-industrial machine sort of squatting in the corner.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. That is, it's fascinating just to see this. And I think especially as me as an American, when I sort of visualize a lot of the buildings here in England, I like to see the original timber roofs and ceilings. I love them. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and especially when they remain unchanged. Nothing has really been done to it. You've still got the dovecote up there. You've still got the wagon porch, which is now the office. You've got the old apple loft, which is a bridal suite. Everything is exists in its present form. Right. But the floor level's been raised a bit, and there's a wooden floor, and that's kind of it, really. Everything is...
Right. So you've mentioned bridal suite. So you've obviously this has now evolved into a wedding space.
Oh yeah,
right?
for weddings,
yes.
This is the dance floor and the bar. This is the party room now. Yeah.
So, but you've taken over a little bit of the running of Alpen, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So how did that start and when did that start and kind of what's your vision?
So that was about 2016.
Okay, not that long ago.
And we were getting a sense that historic house tours and cream teas and everything weren't really enough for us. So we felt that weddings were, and private events as well,
right.
were one of the ways that we could carry on. Now, the great thing about Alpen is that it's a valley in its own right, so it's very private.
Yeah.
So you've got a party space in the middle, you've got accommodation everywhere, people can hire it for the weekend and they can call it theirs and have a good time in the Cotswolds. And also we throw lots of parties of our own, we love throwing parties,
yes.
so it sort of made sense. You kind of do what you know, don't you?
Yes, so true.
So we do parties.
So when was this converted, this space, into this dance floor that we see today?
Well, this was actually done in the 90s for my parents. They had it as their restaurant. And it was a licensed restaurant for 20 years. And then when we started doing weddings, it was too small for the footfall. So we had marquees next to it, and that was obviously not sustainable. So we decided to scale up, as it were. We decided we needed another space for dining so that you could have two areas.
Yes.
One where you could have a dance and a drink, the other place where you could sit down and eat. So that's the barn next door, which we built in 2020. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So this is the pole barn.
Wow. So this is an extension, Hugo, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So traditionally the door would have been about this level. There would have been a bank going up there, and you would chuck in all your apples and grain through the much higher level door.
Right.
We put the level down and then created this enormous space by moving a lot of earth to flatten it out. Right. And then we could build this structure on it.
Honestly, it's really sympathetically done. You know, it fits when you come from the cider press room into here.
Well, it was my father's idea. He said, if you're going to build a barn, we need an architect so that they understand old buildings and they can get a sense of how you chime with the old and the new. You've got a sense of continuity and change. And he also said we need to use our own materials, so it's as low impact, sustainable as possible.
Right.
And we had larch up in one of our woods. This is all larch that all comes from our woods.
How many weddings are you doing a year then?
So we're doing between sort of 60 and 75. Wow.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's more than one a week.
But the thing is, when you're employing lots of people, you need to keep them busy. That's the important thing.
That's exactly right.
So 2 a week, basically.
2 a week.
And that way we can do it in such a way that we can still live here, we can still enjoy the estate for ourselves. It's not turning into some sort of factory.
Right.
And people can also still enjoy a bit of peace. They can arrive the day before. They can decorate, welcome their friends to the cottages, they can spend a whole day here on their wedding day and the next day afterwards.
Right.
And we felt that was an article of faith because that's how I got married and all of my brothers and sisters got married in that way.
Right.
And we had this sort of idea on our weddings that what we would do is the next day, everyone's feeling a bit sort of, green around the gills, all go down to the lake, have a barbecue, jump in the lake and have a swim. That was the sort of the ideal for it.
Yes.
And that's exactly what people do now. So it's great seeing them carrying it on.
Because you've got holiday accommodation here.
Yeah.
So the wedding party and guests can all stay on the estate. Yeah. But then you're mentioning a swim here.
Yeah, so we've got the mill down there, and beyond it we have the mill pond and a lake beyond that. So the idea, it's all spring-fed lake, so it's very clean water, and people can all gather around, do whatever they want, and then jump in when they want to freshen up.
But it's such a pretty place to be married and also, of course, to live. I mean, this is the Cotswolds, just so idyllic, picturesque Britishness.
Strangely, this part of the Cotswolds it's the folded valleys on the escarpment, so it's the lesser known part of the Cotswolds.
Sort of undiscovered Cotswolds.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, I think it's absolutely brilliant what you've done, and if I didn't have Mapperton, I'd recommend one of my children to be married here when the time comes.
Exactly.
Not for quite some time, I hope. Alpen Manor is a wonderful, wonderful wedding venue. It is so peaceful there. Thank you so much for joining me once again for this historic house visit. What a treat it has been. Before the end of my time at Alpin, I took a peek inside the beautiful church just behind the house and a focus of family life. One of the things I do love about manor houses like yours is that there's, as we've discussed, there's always a church.
The little church stands behind the house, and it's also medieval of origin, but been completely rebuilt by the Victorians, except for the font, which was found being used as a cattle trough on the farm, and then they re-erected it, building this baptistry.
I was christened in this font.
No, were you really?
Wasn't I? I think
Yes.
I was.
Oh my goodness.
4 out of 5 children married, yeah?
Wait, 4 to 5 of your children married here.
Yeah.
Hugo?
Yeah.
Yep. And wow, christened here as well?
Yeah.
My goodness. So this part of the church, then it looks, I mean, it's very colorful.
And it says in the inscription, beautified with mosaics to the glory of God or something. In the 1887, isn't it? So they built quite a plain chancel before, and we got all this Italianate neo-Byzantine work, which is a kind of arts and crafts principle done by a man called Powell of Whitefriars. And it's full of colour.
Yes, full of colour.
Very richly textured church with wonderful stained glass everywhere. It's quite good quality of its period. Sunbursts on the roof.
Sunbursts on the roof.
So it's special. It's not what you expect, is it? A little country
No.
churchyard. It's described as the richest Edwardian Victorian interior in a Cotswold village.